Hi, I'm Doug Fields from Download Youth Ministry, and I want to thank you for the role that you're playing in your youth ministry. I've been doing youth ministry for a long time, and it's amazing to me how a teenager's life can be changed by such a simple act from a caring adult like yourself. You see, my own story goes back to when I felt called into youth ministry, and I was only a high school student. There were a few adults that were hanging around my youth group who were just so kind to me, and it wasn't that they were just nice. They actually spoke words of truth into me, and these words altered the course of my life and who I am today because of actually youth workers just like yourself. It certainly wasn't just the paid youth pastor at my church. It was the incredible team of volunteers who surrounded him and invested in our ministry. And it's interesting that over 40 years later, I still remember their names, I can see their faces, and I can actually even recall the words that shaped me. They were the people that I wanted to be like. And I'll give you some specific examples. I remember Pam Sears telling me that I was a good leader and I had lots of potential to help other people out. I remember Gary Linhart pulling me aside and saying that he noticed that I was good at greeting visitors. And I think he noticed because he was also good at that too. I remember Mike Driggs asking me to give a short talk to his junior high group, and then afterwards he told me that I was a really good speaker. And from that day on, I began to think more about what would it mean to speak. I remember Mrs. Jameson, and she was the only volunteer I didn't call by her first name because she was really, really old. She was like, in her early 40s. And she told me that she saw me being a pastor someday. And I remember the exact words of my youth pastor. Jim Burns said, "Doug, you have the ability to be either a juvenile delinquent or a world-changing youth pastor, and I hope you make the right choice." And, here I am years later. And aside from, a few years at a detention camp in Montana, I turned out all right. But who I am today is really a combination of the words that were spoken into me as a teenager. And I want you to listen to this very carefully. You have the potential to shape a teenager's life forever simply by the power of your words. I mean, did you realize that? Because sometimes in events and activities, and we're trying to corral kids at small group, we actually forget that intentional nudges right now might change their life forever in the future. See, in youth ministry, there are just so many things that fight for our attention, planning that next event or getting the small group lesson ready or loading up on XXX bottles of 5-hour energy drink just to try to match the average 8th grader's enthusiasm. I swear junior hires are on drugs, and it actually makes me want to be on them when I work with them. But here's my point. It takes a lot to be in youth ministry. And so often we define our success by how well the event went or how many kids attended. However, in my time working with students, I've discovered that these events, they're not really what kids remember. I mean, think about this in your own life. If you went to church as a teenager, how many of your youth workers' messages and talks do you really remember? I mean, seriously, think about it, and I'll wait. Okay, my guess is you maybe remember one or two. Maybe if you were there in junior high and high school, you heard hundreds of messages and maybe you remember 1% of them. And for those of us who teach regularly, that's actually kind of a depressing thought. But what if I asked you to name a time where a youth worker actually stopped and engaged with you, had a conversation with you and encouraged you or told you that you were good enough at something? Well, those are the moments that we remember. And as youth workers, we spend so much time planning Bible studies and hunting for new relevant curriculum and playing creative games and designing methods for, remembering names. But in the long run, all of that stuff, it pales in comparison to the power of an encouraging word that is spoken into the life of a teenager at just the right time. What if? What if the intentionality that we give to youth ministry development was the same amount of time that we gave to word development? I mean, think about this. What if we thought more intentionally about the words that we use? So how do we do this? Well, if words are powerful, then positive words result in powerful encouragement. And every student, every teen, well, just about every person I know is dying for encouragement. In all my years of youth ministry, I've never met a teenager who said, "Doug, you got to stop encouraging me, please. I've had it up to here with all that encouragement and the positive words." You know this, but there's a lot of research out. And a specific one out of the University of Nebraska revealed that it takes 10 to 20 positive words to counterbalance one negative word. Now, think about all the discouragement your students receive at school, from real life bullies to even their friends who just make flippant negative comments followed by, that eraser phrase of, I'm just kidding. Or consider the negative words they hear at home. I mean, there's so much going on in their life. We've got this uphill battle facing us when we meet them and they make their way to youth group or Sunday school or small group, and we've got to counteract all that negative with this positive. And you may be thinking, well, what should I encourage? I mean, help me, Doug. Be more specific. And it's a great question. Here's my one-word answer about what you should encourage. Everything. I mean, really, encourage everything. Encourage students, their positive actions. Encourage their smiles, their willingness to help, the way they greet new students. Encourage their haircut or their clothes or their Bible or their old Bible. Basically what I'm saying is look for every opportunity to encourage a student. The more, the better. See, and then the better you know a student, really the deeper and more personal the encouragement should be. But if you get in the habit of looking at a teenager and thinking, what can I say that's positive? What can I say that's empowering? And what can I say that's true? Now, obviously, part of our ability to do this in a life-changing way, we got to rely on God's Spirit. And so what if before every weekend service or small group or event that you and I were to ask God to give us the right word? God, give us the right word for just one student. Now imagine the impact you'd have. If you were speaking just directly on God's behalf to the heart of one kid. And I'm not asking you to be overly spiritual. I was just talking to God and he just gave me this word. No, don't be weird. Be yourself. And then speak empowering words. So we've got empowering words over here. And what I want to do is I want to just switch directions just a little bit. Because in addition to offering words of encouragement, you and I as youth workers, we actually need to use words that speak truth. And sometimes truthful words won't always come across as encouraging words. But as youth workers, we need to learn to speak the truth and we need to learn to speak it in love. So when a student does something or says something that's maybe inappropriate or out of bounds, it may be time for us to use truthful words, even if those words might result in a little gentle confrontation. So let's be real. Confrontation isn't fun. I don't know anyone who enjoys confrontation, maybe a few psychos that I've worked with in the past, but speaking words of truth, they can actually be an important act of kindness or discipleship. It's vital for their spiritual development. And these words of confrontation should happen with an attitude of grace and a position of truth. So grace says, I love you, where truth says, you're being inappropriate. And when we combine them together, they can be powerful. And see, I've discovered that, a lot of leaders, they would rather not say anything. They'd rather do the silent treatment. They hope that the negative behavior is going to go away before the need for truthful or directive words. But it doesn't happen like that. And I want to tell you that when confrontation is done with an attitude of grace and truth, it does lead to powerful results. Sometimes the truth does hurt. But when it's done with wisdom and sensitivity and love, it can actually influence a life as much as encouragement. All right, that's a lot to take in, a lot to think about. And so I want to challenge you this week, okay? This week, let's go specific. Look for ways that you can use words of encouragement and words that speak truth with grace and love. Look for the ways to build up the teenagers that God has placed in your life, because your impact and your influence as a leader can be life-changing. The more intentional you become with your words that you speak into their life, the more potential it has for a young life to be changed. Thanks so much for taking some time to learn and to think a little more deeply about what you're doing in youth ministry. And by the way, thanks. Thanks for what you're doing. See you next time.